Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending this meeting of the Universal Services Select Committee today. This meeting is being recorded and webcast live on YouTube via the County Council's website. Filming is also permitted by the press and public, and so by remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to potentially being recorded. Please be aware that filming is only permitted in the room whilst the meeting is taking place. Filming during any breaks or elsewhere in the building is not permitted. We are not expecting a fire drill, but in the event there is a fire alarm, please exit via reception and follow everyone across to the Great Hall. Toilets. Toilet facilities can be found to the right when you leave the hall. Hearing loop. The room is fitted with an infrared hearing loop which is permanently switched on. You will need either a neck loop if you use a hearing aid or headphones for amplified sound. Both are available on request from reception. I'd like to welcome all members to this meeting, as well as executive members and also those who are here to observe and to speak, and we have a fair number of officers with us today. Thank you all for attending. Members, this is the third of these SP25 meetings. We have a busy agenda, and it's therefore important that we make the most efficient and effective use of the time available. Please can I ask members to be both succinct in your questions and contributions to the debate, so that all members have the opportunity to contribute to the scrutiny of the items in the time available. If members want to propose amendments to the recommendations, I would appreciate it if you can make your amendments known at the start of the debate. Councillor Taylor has made that known so already. We have a copy of her written amendment for this, item 5B. If an amendment arises out of the debate, it can still be introduced at a later stage. I want to remind all members that any amendments should be in writing and must be proposed and seconded. When it comes to voting, we will take any proposed amendments in reverse order and then vote on the substantive recommendations. Item 1 of the agenda is apologies for absence. Caroline, do we have any apologies for absence today?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Tim Groves and Councillor Mark Cooper is in attendance as a substitute member. From Councillor Rupert Curl and Councillor Malcolm Wade is in attendance as the substitute member, and from Councillor Sarah Pankhurst and Councillor Malcolm Wallace is in attendance as the substitute member. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Members are welcome to disclose any declaration of interest when we get to the main item. Item 3, deputations. I'm very glad to say that we're joined today by David Payne, along with Harry, Sophia and Jackson, to make a deputation in relation to 5A of today's agenda, school crossing patrols. They are from St Mark's Primary School, Hatch Warren. Thank you all for attending, and we'll look forward to hearing your views when you come to speak. And I'd also like to thank the teacher who's come along with them today. You will collectively have 10 minutes to speak as per our deputation procedure, and I will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. We are unable to reply to your deputation directly. However, we thank you for taking the time to speak to us today, and we'll listen to what you have to say and take it into consideration when looking at the proposed recommendations today. Once your deputation is finished, you are very welcome to stay and observe the rest of the meeting. We will also have Councillor Jackie Porter has requested to speak to the meeting, and she will also speak after the first deputation, so I'll do it in that order. So if the Mr Payne, along with 3 children, with Harry, Sophia and Jackson, wants to go up the lectern, please go up the lectern. You should be able to turn it on, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Mr Payne.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak today. My name is Dave Payne. I am a father of 3 children who attend St Mark's Primary School in Basingstoke, one of which is going to be speaking here today. I'm also the chair of the school PTA. I'm going to hand over now to Jackson, to Sophia and Harry, who will give us a very quick intro.
Hi, I'm Jackson. I'm 11 years old and I'm here to talk about something very important. The plan to stop paying for school crossing patrols. This decision could bring effect how we are safe and how we learn and our overall well-being. Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm 10 years old and I want to talk to you about why it's so important to keep our school crossing patrols the friendly and trustworthy people who help us cross the road safely on our way to school.
Hi, I'm Harry and I've just turned 8 years old. There's a plan to stop funding, but we think it's a bad idea. I'm going to let my dad explain why we need to keep them around to stay safe and happy.
Thank you. All three very nervous, but were jumped at the chance to have the opportunity to come and speak with you today. So let's talk about safety crossing patrols, which I will call SCPs from here on. Our school is situated next to a very busy road called Woodbury Road. We currently have 2 SCPs on this road, although one has resigned recently and there is a vacancy. We have around 450 families who are in our school with 630 pupils altogether. Approximately 400 children and adults cross this road at least twice a day. The parents at the school submitted a petition to the council in February of this year following a campaign called Save Our School Crossing Patrol Officers. We had over 600 signatures for the petition, which was reviewed by Councillor Adams-King. As you would expect, there was an overwhelming outrage from parents at the consideration of cutting this budget area. Parents want their children to be safe when walking and cycling to school. Every day, Woodbury Road has a large number of community vehicles, many of whom exceed the speed limits, as well as heavy good vehicles that could do immense damage to our children. One parent wrote the following on the petition. As a member of a 5-year-old who attends a school, these patrols are invaluable. The speed at which cars come down Woodbury Road when they are not there is quite frankly frightening. These crossing patrol officers not only make sure that it's safe to cross for the children and their parents, but they also highlight to drivers to slow down and to show the children how to cross safely. I am incredibly disheartened and quite frankly angry to hear that the council are considering cutting this vital service to our community. Having presented the school's context and the parental views, I'm now going to take your points from your website and I'm going to offer our own counterpoints to those. You state that SCPs are only active for a limited time each weekday and only during term time, and that new measures would be available at any time of the day. Whilst SCPs are indeed only active during specific times, these align with peak traffic periods when children are most at risk. At those times, we have hundreds of people crossing the road, sometimes 2 to 4 times a day. SCPs provide personalised assistance and can adapt to varying traffic conditions, unlike automated crossing measures, which may not respond effectively to real-time hazards. The human elements of SCPs ensures that safety is dynamically managed, which is especially critical during high-traffic school times. Moreover, the visibility and authority of SCPs can deter reckless driving behaviours, a function that static crossing measures cannot fulfil. Your website states that you would work with schools to help them develop or amend their school travel plans to encourage active travel methods to school using suitable routes, such as walking or cycling. You also add that further possible mitigation measures could include working with schools to provide road safety education and implementing road measures such as low-cost signage. Well, while travel plans and road safety education are valuable, they cannot replace the immediate and active roles of SCPs in protecting children. SCPs provide direct supervision and intervention that signage and education alone cannot achieve. Children, particularly the younger ones, of which I have a 5-year-old as well, they benefit from physical presence and guidance of SCPs, which reinforces road safety lessons in a practical context. Additionally, SCPs build trust with parents, encouraging them to allow their children to walk to school knowing they are under professional supervision. The website states that if any SCPs are withdrawn, the alternative measures would ensure road safety would be maintained and that road safety work with schools could also provide reassurance. The removal of SCPs is likely to heighten parental concerns, leading to more people being driven to school, counteracting efforts to promote active travel. SCPs provide not only a safe crossing, but also a sense of security for parents and children, facilitating independence and confidence in road safety skills. The trust and reliability of SCPs cannot be wholly replicated by alternative measures, which may not address immediate dangers effectively. The potential decrease in active travel due to perceived safety risks directly contradicts public health goals aimed at increasing physical activity among children. On the website, it states that where schools would prefer to retain an SCP, you would support them to offer this through a service level agreement or to use volunteers. Relying on schools to fund SCPs through service level agreements places a huge financial burden on educational institutions already managing tight budgets. I know this all too well. As the chair of the PTA, I have to fundraise over £20,000 a year to cover extra things that the budget simply can't cover. Volunteer-based solutions, whilst well-intentioned, will not provide the same level of reliability, consistency and training as professional SCPs. The expertise and experience of SCPs are crucial for effective road safety management, which cannot be guaranteed with volunteers who lack the necessary training and commitment. And again, as someone who relies on volunteers to help run school events, I see the problem with relying on volunteers on a regular basis. Whilst we can close a stall to manage with missing volunteers at a fundraising event, we cannot close a road if a volunteer does not turn up for their volunteer day for road safety. You say if schools feel their budget could be affected if they decide to implement an SLA, that it's not compulsory and schools could decide not to take on the cost. Well, placing the financial responsibility on schools to fund SCPs forces them to choose between essential education resources and student safety. This creates an unfair situation where only schools with sufficient funds can afford the critical service, potentially leaving others vulnerable. Ensuring the safety of children should be a communal responsibility supported by the council to provide fair and protection across all schools. You do make some good points on there, some negatives about removing them. You say there could be a negative environmental impact if the removal of SCPs results in more children being driven to school. With transport emissions increasing, there may also be increased congestion caused by an increase in car journeys to school. We agree, the removal of SCPs is likely to lead to an increased car usage, increasing traffic congestion and environmental pollution. The presence of SCPs encourage walking and cycling by ensuring safe routes to school. Increased traffic not only endangers children but also undermines environmental goals by increasing emission and poor air quality. SCPs play a crucial role in promoting sustainable travel behaviours and reducing the environmental footprint of school commutes. Finally, you say there would be a cost of maintaining any replacement measures which will require regular maintenance. Implementing some solutions may also incur energy and communication charges, and these costs would need to be accounted for, which will probably reduce the net saving from withdrawing SCP service at a particular location. And again, yes, we agree. The costs associated with installing and maintaining alternative measures such as automated crossings, signage and communication systems, it can all quickly add up. These measures may also require ongoing adjustments and repair, which will lead to even more expenses. In contrast, SCPs offer a cost-effective, reliable and human-centred approach to road safety. Investing in SCPs provides a direct and proven method to protect our children, ensuring that financial resources are used efficiently to achieve the highest standard of safety. And with that, I'm going to invite Jackson, Sophia and Harry back to the mic.
The government figures show that 4,577 pedestrians aged 15 and under were hurt on UK roads last year. That's 88 children every week.
Tragically, 1,340 of those were either killed or left with serious, life-changing injuries. That's nearly 4 child pedestrians a day, or a class of 26 children every week. We don't want one of us or one of our friends to become one of those numbers.
In conclusion, the funding for the school crossing patrols can make it more dangerous for children like us.
School crossing patrols help us cross the road safely, encourage us to walk or cycle to school, and make everyone feel safe in their community. We ask you to think again and keep supporting school crossing patrols so that we can stay safe on our way to school.
Thank you for your time. We hope that the concerns will be taken seriously enough to avoid these cuts. And all we will say is, please don't stop our SCPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Thank you, Harry, Sophia and Jackson. Very well done. I think you did that extremely well. I'm extremely grateful for you coming and hope you have a future occasion to come back to the County Council and address us on another subject as eloquently as you have on school crossing patrol. So thank you all very much for your time, and you're very welcome to stay and listen to the debate afterwards if you wish to do so. I'm now going to invite Councillor Jackie Porter to speak to the meeting. Jackie, you know the protocol. You've again got 10 minutes to address us.
Thank you. And firstly, I don't think I can top that. That was absolutely what the children at the school where I'm a governor would have said as well. And I'm going to look at it, though, from a whole council point of view, but using my experience as a governor of over 25 years to know how important that service is. The recommendation is to remove school crossing controls from 19 sites that don't justify criteria for SCP sites, and 5 more where there are vacancies still in place. The criteria is PV squared of 4 million. Now that figure sounds huge, but actually it relies on the V squared being the volume of traffic. In LTP4 arrangements, surely that should be the volume of pedestrians that's important, not the volumes of traffic. This is a peak time service. School crossing patrols, as has just been explained, judge the traffic as it's going through. They can make judgments about whether they wait and hold the children back or whether they go. That's different from people just pressing a button to cross the road or looking at a yellow bollard, reminding them that children will be crossing. It is such a vital service. You actually recommend removing school crossing patrols where alternatives can be provided. And you state a cost of £6,000 per annum per school crossing patrol as it stands. So that 15 plus 4 further, saving 110, seems to substantiate that rough figure. The County Council is not required to have school crossing patrols, as you've said many times before, but it does have a duty to promote road safety and to take reasonable steps to promote road casualties. The children have just described those casualties perfectly, and I won't go through them again. This safety record is difficult to prove, but they would have been put there for a reason originally, and it's interesting that the equation of PV squares favours the vehicle count rather than pedestrians, which seems counter to our new transport policy LTP4. Those sites and maintenance of services at those sites would cost more than £1 million, let alone all of the rest put together. Savings would be slight, but the risk to life and safeguarding would be huge. The 5 sites that have remained vacant for the last 5 years are also discussed. And I think that's something where we need to be looking again at making sure we make the job attractive. This council today is reviewing whether children and schools regard this as a best site to cross. And I think we regard that as the best site to cross because historically they are the best sites to cross. We should, if we are going to go ahead with this, and I sincerely hope we don't, review where the children currently prefer to cross, because in many cases that may be different. Children under 10 cannot be expected to make the correct decisions about where to cross, and the timing of which they cross. The reason cycling proficiency tests are only taught at 10 is because the brain cannot compute relative velocities before that time. So we are urging children to walk to school, and for 10-year-olds, they should be able to walk 3 miles, just less than 3 miles. None of the children walk 3 miles. The consequence of that is parents take those children by car, and that adds to the school traffic. And on days like today, rainy days, parents, and I know one in this room has done it today, take the children to school and add to that school traffic too. Children who walk to school often walk alone, but some walk with parents to a point and then are dropped off and let to go on their own. The routes they take should be as designated as what we describe as a safe route to school, but they may not be as preferred. So in my experience, we've had 2 secondary school crossings that have improved the lives of secondary school children quite recently. One was a secondary school crossing, which was installed on Andover Road, and another one's just to be installed at Worthy Road. And the 2 alone, looking at the budgets, will have cost more than £1 million. So if we're doing that right across the county, I cannot imagine how we're going to do this effectively and in time and well enough to be certain those children will be safe. This decision is false economy and requires much further thought. And this is where I differ slightly from St Peter's School, but I understand absolutely why they're saying it, because school budgets are very tight. A few years ago now, I wrote a paper on alternative ways to manage this service to bring down costs. It wasn't even considered. It looked at using school staff on a rota so that they weren't required to do it every single day, but the school would be trained as a whole on how to do school crossings. It could also be useful with early morning breakfast and later afternoon after school clubs as well. But For all of this, a child's life and safeguarding is important and absolutely vital. I'm a governor at Kingsworthy Primary School. It's one of the sites that you're proposing to close. I'm just using it as an example because I know that all the others would be able to give you similar comments. It's one of the sites that where the school crossing patrol Bill is so well loved that he even received a cake and card on his birthday last week. But crucially, he's there, dressed in bright yellow, both to stop cars and to deter strangers who could lurk in the hedgerows. What are the alternatives to that? The school is not on the main road, but set back with woodland on both sides of the road and a bend in the road. There are 20 miles an hour flashing signs, but they aren't prominent and the school is further round the bend. Nobody notices them. And in fact, I had a letter from another member of the public recently saying, why aren't they on? Actually, they are on, but people just aren't noticing them. Safety is a real concern, and the school does have a duty of care, and they regard that as important just outside the school as well as inside. And I hope the County Council thinks that too. This conversation that we're having here today should have taken place with the school's forum before it came to here. We're proud to say that Kingsworthy School is increasing its percentage of children walking to school. Parents appreciate the crossing service too. Walking with parents is one step towards learning road safety, but learning to take advantage of school crossing patrols and other safety features along their route to school is important too. We really cannot do this. It's false economy.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, for those comments. To move on to the agenda, item 4 is Chairman's announcements. I'm sure you're glad to know that I have no direct announcements, but this is an opportunity to hear the working group report that was received at the meeting before last and will be as relevant today as we continue throughout this process and consider today's streams. A copy of the working group report has been appended under item 5 of the agenda. Councillor Branson chaired that working group, and I can invite Councillor Branson to make a comment at this stage. Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. I will repeat what I have said before to the Select Committee for any new people that are listening online or in the audience, but I'd like to emphasise that the working group, we spent a lot of time looking and considering all the contributions from organisations and individuals to the public consultation. And although none of us were elected to make these savings, we all wanted to ensure that the effect on our residents would be mitigated as much as possible. I very much welcome the deputations on the school crossing patrols. I mean, many of the points that you raised, we have raised in the working group. One thing I think we know that getting people to these jobs at the moment is not difficult. There are many school crossing patrols that are vacant. Some of these, I think, are not missed as much as some. But as we have said before, as Councillor Porter pointed out, the council does need to consider that there are safe routes to schools. That's not always the same as school crossing patrols. So we would like to emphasise that. We did like the idea, as has been pointed out, the social value of school crossing patrols, because I think that can be important. And, you know, we would obviously like to scrutinise anything that comes up in the way. I think the problem is getting people to apply for these jobs now has become more difficult, certainly since COVID. A lot of people don't want to make those commitments. Certainly there's one fairly near me that, you know, it's an unsafe place, but we cannot get someone in to take over for the guy that retired after 30 years service. When it comes to street lighting, we agreed. This was one that I think there were less people objecting to this than there were to many of the other proposals. I think a lot of people who live in residential streets were fairly happy with the idea of extending the night time, but we must realise that the County Council, when it receives requests to vary the lighting, and you know, if there is crime or other issues, accident issues, the county council can vary the lighting, whether it's on or off. But we have to consider other factors such as personal security, travel safety, and not just specific crime and road accident statistical in determining these requests. I think that's all really I need to say. It's all in the report, so you know, please look at the report if you wish to see any more on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. We're now moving on to the meat of what we're going to discuss today, which is the pre-scrutiny of the SP25 savings proposals. The cover report summarises the two streams being looked at today during this meeting, as well as the draft report for Cabinet. The two streams are to be scrutinised separately as 5A, school crossing patrols, and 5B, which is street lighting. So first of all, I'd like to invite Patrick Blogg to present the stream and the appendix on school crossing patrols. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. There are two principal items I will cover today. Appendix 4 of the Cabinet report, which is the savings proposals for school crossing patrols, and also Appendix 6, which are the proposals for street lighting. Both of these are included under cover of a brief introductory report from me. Additionally, also included in the documents is a draft report for Cabinet on the 14th of October. This report includes the two appendices just mentioned, and also the other 5 universal services proposals, 4 of which have been presented to you at previous select committees, and the remaining one being presented later this week. Now, I was not proposing to go through the draft Cabinet report, but it is there for information. But I would flag the contextual information within that sets out the budget context against which we have had to prepare these proposals. This is included in paragraph 9, which includes the sentence, "Whilst further, more detailed work needs to be undertaken, it is likely that the County Council will face a revised budget gap of at least £175 million before accounting for the SP25 savings, which is a £43 million increase on the previous £132 million for the next financial year." Against this backdrop, my Directorate has prepared 7 proposals that have been consulted on, and I will now introduce 2 of these that are for consideration by members today. Appendix 4, School Crossing Patrols. The first appendix to the Cabinet report that I will present is for the School Crossing Patrol Service. It contains 5 recommendations for Cabinet. The first is to note the outcome of the 2024 Future Services consultation in relation to proposals on the future of the School Crossing Patrol Service. The second is that the School Crossing Patrol Service provided at 17 School Crossing Patrol sites detailed in the report is withdrawn at a saving of £0.114 million. This comprises 14 sites that do not meet the criteria for justifying a school crossing patrol, and 3 sites that already have safe alternative measures in place for children to cross the road without the requirement for a school crossing patrol, in accordance with the County Council's policy. The third is that a further 156 school crossing patrol sites, including 4 sites that have been vacant for 4 or more years, are reviewed to assess whether suitable alternative measures that are financially viable could be put in place for children to cross the road safely without the requirement for a school crossing patrol. The fourth recommendation is that at sites where the assessment determines suitable alternative measures that are financially viable, that these measures are then implemented. The final recommendation is for delegated authority to progress arrangements and implement any decisions. I'm now going to present a brief summary of the main content of the paper. The County Council operates 177 school crossing patrols across Hampshire. 4 of these are funded directly by the school through a service level agreement with the County Council. Whilst the County Council has a legal duty to promote road safety, there is no specific legal requirement for the County Council to provide school crossing patrols. Paragraphs 37 to 48 in the report set out some of the detailed legal considerations, more specifically the duties on the County Council in this respect. Criteria to identify if a school crossing patrol is justified is contained in the County Council policy. It is based on a number of factors, including an assessment of a PV squared value, which is a calculated value based upon the number of vehicles that pass a location and the number of pedestrians that cross the road close to that point within the busiest half hour. This is the nationally accepted method used by local authorities. Another key factor is the potential duplication of resources, such as a crossing already in place. The cost of providing the school crossing patrol service across Hampshire is approximately £1.1 million per year. On average, this is around £6,000 for each school crossing patrol. Removing the provision at the 17 sites that do not meet the criteria would generate an annual saving of around £114,000, which would contribute to addressing the financial pressures I outlined earlier, but also continue to ensure the County Council is meeting its duty to promote safety. If the County Council were to implement or were able to implement alternative safety measures at all the sites that are not already considered safe, and could then withdraw all crossing patrol provision, the likely saving could be a further £1 million. However, we recognise that there would be some sites that could be more difficult to make safe without school crossing patrols, and others where alternatives could be too costly. In these cases, the school crossing patrol would remain. Reviewing and assessing the sites that could be made safe is a significant piece of work. Any savings from these would be achieved from 2025/26 and beyond due to the timescales to identify, develop, and deliver any alternative safety measures. It is also worth noting that any alternative measures put in place would be there and usable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as opposed to only the times when school crossing patrols are operating. Turning to the consultation responses, there were 2 proposals presented for consideration in the consultation documents. The first was removal of a number of sites that did not meet the justification criteria. The second was looking at the remaining sites, not funded through a service level agreement with the school, to consider what measures could make the site safe without the need for a school crossing patrol. It is worth noting that the number of sites consulted on differs slightly from those in the report due to changes in the number of school crossing patrol officers in the service since the start of the consultation. Consultation respondents demonstrated greater agreement with the second proposal, with disagreement generally tending towards and to be the higher with those who either use the service or know someone who uses the service. The concerns raised in relation to safety, with mitigations suggesting alternative measures would need to be safe. Paragraphs 55 through to 73 in the report contain much more detail on the consultation feedback. Within the table in paragraph 72, key concerns raised in the consultation have been set out and responses provided to these concerns. In summary, until a sustainable, long-term national funding solution can be found to address the financial pressures facing the County Council and wider local government, we have no choice but consider changing or reducing services in some areas. The County Council's duty is to promote road safety. It is the responsibility of parents or guardians to get their child safely to school. However, to assist in meeting its statutory duties, the County Council is proposing to only withdraw school crossing patrols at sites that do not meet the criteria or where there are alternative measures put in place. The concerns raised through the Future Services consultation have helped shape the mitigating actions that would be taken if recommendations are agreed by Cabinet. Examples of this include providing road safety training and offering a service level agreement with schools, which would be offered to schools where a school crossing patrol is proposed for removal. These are the key points from my introduction, and I'm joined today by Tim Lawton, Assistant Director for Highways, Engineering and Transport, and Adrian Gray, who is Head of Traffic and Safety, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blogg. So we now move on to the committee to ask questions of what Ms. Blogg just presented and on the report in front of us. So I invite questions from the committee. Councillor Hare, Powell, you're first.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you for the children who spoke and from the school. That was very, very lovely to hear from you. Can I ask, the 4 pedestrian crossings which were vacant for a number of years, is there any particular reason why they were vacant? How well was it advertised? How well were the jobs advertised? That's my first question. And my second question is, would the savings only be 114,000?
Yes, Ms. Blogg, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hare. Vacant for a number of years, how well do we try and promote to those? I think it is the way I read that question. We work very hard to fill the vacancies for school crossing patrols. I think the fact of the matter is that they are quite hard to recruit to because the timing for which they need to be available, i.e. term time only typically, and also the start and the end of the day means it's quite difficult to get that continuity throughout that employment throughout the whole day, because it will by necessity sometimes mean that they need to fill their day at the start and the end of each day, but not necessarily in the middle. So in terms of the hours they work, they're not always very desirable because it's not the continuity of hours that take place through the day. I might just ask Adrian if he wants to add any more to that. Adrian?
Thanks, Patrick. No, I don't think so. They are very hard to recruit because, as Patrick said, that they're not attractive to everybody. And in some specific locations, it's the fact that there are many other job opportunities as well, which again make that particular position hard to recruit to.
Second question, Councillor Hay, the savings are 114,000. For the ones presented in the report, that would be the saving if they're removed. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Wade. Malcolm.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, have you an indication of how much it will cost to put in alternative safety arrangements across all of the other 170 odd crossing, 150, isn't it, crossings? The second one is, in any exercise, no crossing points will be the same. The traffic will be different, the number of pedestrians will be different, so you have to set out a criteria to judge what is making it safe. Now, while some of them may be easy to judge, there will be others that are more, shall we say, value judgments. So I'd like some idea of what criteria you will use, because some of them will be probably relatively straightforward, others will be much more complex, but because we're in a money-saving situation, we will be then making value judgments that, well, can it fit in? Can we just get, we might. Is that articulate the question enough?
Patrick.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wade, for your question. The first one, indication of how much it would cost for the 156. I think the first thing to say is that we haven't done that work yet. And the reason we haven't done that work yet is because what we don't want to do is prejudge any decisions that are put forward for Cabinet. So out of necessity, we have not started any detail on that work at all, for the decision has not been made. I think, almost referring to your second question, which partly answers the first question as well, every different area will be unique. Every different area will have particular circumstances. And one of the reasons it's hard to put a figure on exactly what those alternative measures would need to be is because each one would need to be looked at, probably through a desktop exercise to start with, and then further detail for each one. Because I think, as set out in the report, there are a whole range of different alternative measures that could be put in place, and it will be whatever the suitable measures are for a particular area, for the particular circumstances that will be looked at, and the costs and the business case would then flow from that piece of work that's done there. On the criteria to judge those, you mentioned about a value judgment. There is quite a lot of detail around the criteria for the way in which we look at safety of roads, the way in which we look at school crossing patrols, and some of those are mentioned in the report in terms of the criteria within the policy. What I may do here is just bring Adrian in just to answer some of those specific points, if I may. Adrian, please.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, I mean, there's some technical feasibility issues that would need to be considered as to what could actually be constructed in the specific locations. But it would be site specific, so you would have to go and, or we would have to go and do an assessment about what could be constructed, and from that establish the costs, which would lead to the value for money that you referred to.
Councillor Wade, just follow up.
Just a quick point. I totally understand the answer, but really you're suggesting a solution. You don't know how much it's going to cost. So in theory, we could end up spending more money to save less. So I don't stand in business. We would never go down an exercise without knowing what the end product is. But we're going to jump in the dark and say, we'll get rid of these and we'll think what it's going to cost later. But the bottom line is the children.
Patrick, do you want to try and respond to that one? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, Councillor Wade. No, I don't think we're not jumping into the dark, as you suggest. I think we would do it in a very much phased way. As I mentioned, to start with, looking at the business case on a high-level desktop analysis first of all, depending on what the outcome of that is, to go into more detail, and it will be done very much on the basis of something which is appropriate and proportionate for that. So that work has not yet been done. We will do that work, but what we would do is do it on an incremental basis, doing it from desktop through to detail. And I think what I've said in my opening remarks also, but also in the report itself, where it's deemed that it doesn't represent value for money and the business case doesn't stack up, we would not remove the school crossing patrol.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Cooper. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very taken with the presentation made by the children and by Councillor Porter, in which they're implying that it is a false economy. Now, I know when you were making your presentation, you referred to the saving as 0.114 million, which sounds a lot of money. And when you read it as 114,000, it doesn't sound that much money that we're saving from all this particular disruption. And I do know, for example, that Puffin crossings, if they were to replace SCPs, would cost, well, the last one I had done in Romsey was 135,000. I'm told it would be more than double that now. So there's a very real cost to that sort of development. I just wonder whether or not, during your assessment, you have examined the reputational damage to the county by removing just 17 crossings and saving just £114,000. To me, it seems that the county is very proud of its reputation. It's having to fight a difficult battle with savings, but isn't this one of those battles where perhaps we shouldn't slice away at, in a sense, one of the most valued services that we are providing?
Thank you for that question. Yes, Patrick, another one to answer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Can I just take members back to my original remarks on the draft Cabinet report and the fact that we are facing a budget gap of around 175 million per annum. And it is against this backdrop that we've had to look at all the proposals that the Select Committee has seen, and indeed this proposal here. And actually the remarks I made in my opening one around, we do not have a statutory duty to provide school crossing patrols. And it is really that backdrop where we've had to develop these proposals. So whilst, Councillor, you mentioned around the £114,000, it's still a potential saving of £114,000, which we have to look at quite critically. But what we've done within the report and with the proposals is not just say that will be done, we'll make the changes and save that money, but it's done in a very considered and a very methodical way, such that we have to satisfy ourselves that any decisions that we take where they don't meet the criteria, or indeed where we can't put alternative measures in place, then there will be different arrangements left, like the school crossing patrol left there. Just on your point on, I think you mentioned about the cost of puffing controls. Part of the alternative measures that would be looked at can be a whole range of methods. forgive me, that may well be crossings, but there are also other methods which would be much more cost effective than perhaps fully controlled crossings, and all of those would be looked at on a business case basis and built up depending on the particular circumstances and the particular area and what the needs are for that area. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, got a follow-up?
Just to follow up very quickly, I would hope that when the Cabinet reviews this report, that they actually bear in mind the reputational issues I've mentioned, and also the fact that we have a duty of care. It might not be a requirement to provide SCPs, but this county has a duty of care towards its children. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irish, you're next, Wayne.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to those this morning who've made excellent presentations. I've been very impressed with that. Can I have an assurance that that all of these crossing points will have some alternative measures of safety put in and not just left? Because I can think of one in Eastham that's on the list there. It's on quite a busy road. I wouldn't like to think that that those children are going to have no safety measures at all put in when they cross. So can I have the assurance that every crossing point will have some sort of alternative safety measure? Thank you.
Yes, Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Irish. Yes, you can have that assurance. We will be looking at safety measures before anything is removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kenner-Ford, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to understand the school crossings patrols where we haven't had a lollipop person for 4 years. What alternative measures have been put in place at those schools, if any, to ensure the safety of the children crossing in that time?
Yes, Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kenner-Ford. So I think I mentioned in one of my earlier responses that Adrian built up. We work hard to fill the vacancies. Work really, really hard to fill the vacancies. But school crossing patrols are only one measure that we look at as part of the safety of crossings. So other things will be working with the school, road safety education, walk to school and so on. So again, we engage the school very deliberately and actively through that period where there is a vacancy in place. Adrian, I don't know whether you can just give any more details of the specifics we work with on the schools. That might help.
Thanks, Patrick. We would provide road safety education where we can to assist with children's safety in more general terms. But in terms of those specific 4 sites that have not had a school crossing patrol for the period they've been vacant, we haven't put any additional physical measures in place because our expectation is that we will manage to recruit to those. It's just unfortunate that they are difficult to recruit to.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, in which case then, can I ask, do we have any evidence of issues at these schools? As you know, in my division, we don't have school crossing patrols. Most of our issues with our schools are down to inconsiderate parents, dangerous parking, dangerous driving. Have you had any issues raised to the council of issues with the lack of any control at the crossings of these schools?
Thank you.
Adrian.
Yes, I mean, it does come to us that we are not managing to recruit to these sites, so that is a concern, and we do actively try to recruit for that very reason. The other issues you raise about inconsiderate parking and other activities there, yes, of course, that happens at every school. It's not related to those specific locations. I am not personally aware of any safety implications as a result of withdrawing school crossing patrols at those locations.
The next question is from Councillor Drew. David.
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, can I congratulate Team Payne for doing a brilliant job, particularly the youngsters over there. Well done, guys and gals. A question technically, and I think I managed to answer some of them by reading more thoroughly the report, which was to do with the national criteria, which is road safety GB, which come up with the 4 million. But a specific question about how do we compare with other authorities in terms of applying this? Essex or Kent, a couple of big ones that we're often compared with. Where are they at this stage? Because I think that might reassure some parents if provided we're not out of kilter. The other question was to do with that 4 million number of pedestrians times vehicles squared. Other criteria, might we apply any other criteria in particularly difficult locations where we might go, oh yeah, it's a bit under, but actually the road layout is such that it makes it more important that we look at safety measures. The other thought, could you remind me that if we save money on revenue and spend capital, they come out of different budgets? I think there was a question about that, and I think that members of the public listening won't be quite so familiar with the need to separate revenue and capital. And I think reputationally, would you agree that much of these changes and cuts and savings that we're having to make are all risk reputational challenge, and it's hugely frustrating. And would you agree that none of us here in this room want to harm children by doing what we're doing? Because that's absolutely crucial as well. And finally, if I may, Chairman, just an observation. Mark Cooper will recall Norman Arnell saying at one of the Test Valley Borough Council meetings, you can have any money, you can spend any money you want, provided you say where it's going to come from, which I think is always true. So that's our challenge, isn't it? To cut away at the expenditure we've got, trying to get to that 175 million. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry for wittering on. I know don't usually, but there we go.
I certainly understood two questions there. I'm not sure I got the third one as a question, but I think the first two were in context with others and the reputational risk again. So, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I think I got 4 questions out of there, and what I'll do is I'll take the third and the fourth, if I may, and then for the technical ones, I'll hand over to Adrian to answer some of the questions there. So the first one is, you're absolutely correct. It was more of a statement about reminding, I suppose, others beyond this meeting the difference between the revenue and capital side, but you're absolutely right. The investment would need to come from capital, and actually what we're talking about is revenue savings, so thank you for that. You asked the question about reputation, agreeing that none of us would want to harm children. I think absolutely. In terms of the reputation for the County Council, I would go back to my previous answer where we talk about the financial envelope, what we are statutorily bound to deliver, and working against that to develop proposals for which we're not statutorily bound to deliver a particular service. Sometimes there will be a reputational impact from that, but as officers we need to put forward proposals that look at our statutory duties as an organisation. So it's probably not for me to comment on the reputational side in that respect, but it's certainly one I know which will be very important for members. On the other 2 questions I wrote down, the technical road safety GB and also how do we compare with others and the criteria for PV squared. I think I mentioned in my opening remarks that the PV squared assessment and judgment is a nationally accepted criteria used by local authorities, so it's used across many other local authorities. But what I will do, if I hand over to Adrian now, who can perhaps just give us more detail on that and the other criteria that's considered as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Firstly, going back to a bit about how do we compare nationally, Hampshire in the past has had one of the largest numbers of school crossing patrols, but we are also one of the larger authorities. I don't have the exact numbers now, and I can't tell you whether other local authorities are considering the same things that you're reviewing here today. In terms of the PV squared analysis, it is a mathematical comparison of the vehicles and the pedestrians to arrive at that 4 million. That is a nationally applied criteria. I don't know, again, whether all local authorities vary that, but I can tell you that Hampshire does. We look at things like the width of the road, the width of the footway, the speed of the road, visibility to the crossing as well. So it's a weighted criteria. So we do look at other factors as well as just purely the number of vehicles and number of pedestrians.
Yes, thank you, Adrian. The next question is from Councillor Taylor. Kim.
We think. Thanks very much, Chair. A couple of questions, actually, if I may. The 15 sites that we say have been assessed already, and the further 5 sites to be assessed as to whether suitable measures could be put in place. I just want to be absolutely clear, really clear about the method of assessment that we either have, because I'm sure we have used some form of assessment, or will be using, because we've got 2 available to us. One is the national standard for assessing school routes, which looks at time, which you would be looking at times of the school journey only. And the other is the one that we tend to use for crossings and things like that generally, where we would look at, as Director Blogg mentioned, the busiest half hour. Now, the two are entirely different and could come up with very different results. So I want to be absolutely assured that in any assessment that we make, we will use the national standard for assessing safe school routes. That's the first question. The second question, and to pick up on some points that have already been made, that this is a relatively small sum of money, and I understand the argument made about the urgency to save this small amount of money in the short term. But the recommendations do talk about financial viability in the long term, which is an entirely different thing and may mean that we still do not gain the short-term gains that we absolutely need in this period of time. So my second question is, what do we mean by long-term? What's the range?
Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, Councillor Taylor. I'll come to Adrian in a minute to talk about the national standards and the PV squared and the nationally accepted criteria, which I've covered. But if I jump through to the relatively small sum of money and what we mean by the long term. So the savings proposals in the paper talk about the 114,000, which is in the relatively short term, which at the moment, so that's the stuff that we are clear on and we understand in terms of the ones that can be removed. The further piece of work, the 156, I think from memory, is going to be a fairly significant piece of work. And I think we talked about 25, 26 and beyond to do that piece of work. So it's very hard to give you a definitive, it's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4 years. I think it'll depend on how quickly we get through the desktop exercise subject to the decision. And then depending on what happens out of that exercise, how long it then may take to develop those proposals, because some will be out of necessity more complex than others. So it's hard to give you a definitive, but we would look to it as soon as we practically can. Thank you. Adrian, could I come to you for the first question, if I may, please?
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, the PV squared assessment for the school crossing patrols would be when school children are crossing in the morning. The other PV squared, which we use, for instance, for a puffing control crossing, is different, and it wouldn't be applied for assessing the need for a school crossing patrol.
Yes, you can follow up.
Thank you. In terms, thanks for that assurance. I think it's very important because they will come up with different results. In terms of the cost elements, are we taking into account not just the cost of developing the safety routes, but things like potential redundancy costs from letting staff go? I think I'll just leave that there for the minute.
Thank you. Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We would look at it all in the round. So the business case would factor in all the elements associated with that change.
The next question is from Councillor Hiscock. Dominic.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, Councillor Taylor's asked my question already, or I was going to ask her question, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I've got one quick question, which is on page 59, which one of our respondents kindly asked, and it's the very top two lines, and this was raised by Councillor Porter. And it's that question: if we were to move to the metrics in LPT4 of Healthy Streets, would we come up with a different conclusion about road safety, particularly in light of the wording of the Road Traffic Act about the council considered appropriate to take reasonable manners? If we've adopted that LPT4, are we not in a decision to make a reasonable, appropriate decision about road safety based on healthy streets, is what we as a council have adopted as our mantra going forward? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose going back to some of my opening remarks again, we have the policy which we work to, and we work to that policy at the moment. If we were to adopt that, I might ask Adrian to come in a second about whether that would change things or not, I don't know. But the reality is we work to the policy that we have at the moment, and we continue to work to that policy. Adrian, do you have any comments on the LTP4 please?
No specific points on the LTP4, other than to say, in terms of encouraging people to walk and more active travel more generally, than if we were to replace a school crossing patrol with a crossing facility that was open to all people for greater period of day, then it might perhaps have some benefit in that area. That's not in any way to diminish the value of the school crossing patrol. That is purely to come up to suggest that there is other benefits that could accrue from alternative measures that might be built.
Thank you. Councillor Brunson has a question. Jackie.
Just out of interest, I just wondered what percentage of schools do have school crossing patrols in Hampshire?
I don't know that answer. I could find out for you and report back to you.
Wade, Mark, you've got a follow-up.
You, Chairman, yeah, I've got another question. When you're looking at this strategy, do you take into account future developments? For example, I feel quite blessed that no crossing patrol in my division is in this first 17, but one of those is in the division down from me, which is the Hampton Lane Exbury Road. Now, that is north of a 1,300 home proposed development that actually is on hold at the moment, but it will come back. That will generate significant amounts of traffic that you're amending the A326. So consequently, the PV model will be different when that development comes to bear, because there'll be much more traffic. So how do we project? Is this just a now snapshot, or do we actually take into account the future as well?
Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wade. I can't comment on the specific one about the development. I'm not familiar with that one. But when you talk about a development of 1,300 homes, part of the whole process that we go through as an organisation is looking at traffic measures, looking at the infrastructure, looking at what that looks like. And part of those considerations, of course, will be if there are schools, if there are changes to the road layout and the like, what measures, what safety measures may need to be put in place. What I don't know at that level of detail is whether we would look at a specific PV squared for a particular crossing at a particular school. It'd be looked at in the round. So I think to answer your question, it's probably looked at a point in time, but the wider considerations are given by the County Council for large developments and what that means for not just a particular school or an area outside of school, but the wider infrastructure around. Adrian, I don't know if there's any more you want to add for a specific crossing.
No, that's exactly that, Patrick. All I would say in addition to that is that we would resurvey it if we were requested to.
Thank you. Councillor Hare. Pal, you've got another question.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies if I haven't understood this correctly, but with the PV squared methodology, was it a desktop survey, or did you actually go to the SCP points and do the survey?
It's actual survey data.
If there are no more questions, I'm going to ask if anyone has an amendment they wish to pose. You've got another question, Kim? Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I mean, the last question just reminded me what it was. My other question was going to be in terms of the costs. Presumably, to do these assessments, do we use our own staff, or do we, as we often do, outsource? And in those circumstances, it's starting to get even harder to imagine how we actually make any savings on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We have a number of resources within the Directorate who do this type of work, and it will depend very much on how those resources are deployed and the amount of work we have on at any particular time. So what we do is we use often private sector organisations to supplement the resource to deal with the ebbs and flows of peak and demand, and it will depend on the demand at that particular time. But I think by default we would look to use our own staff to do that work. Depending on the demand at a particular time, whether we would have to supplement that, I think we would have to look at it nearer the time when we're doing that work.
Thank you very much. If there's no other questions, I'm assuming there are no one wishes to make an amendment. We haven't been notified of any. So I'm going to invite members to take part in the debate on the report now. So anyone wish to debate this report? Councillor Parker, Stephen, you're first.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I want to talk really to Table 2, which is on page 50, which are the 3 patrols where there is existing what they describe as a duplicate resource. The problem I have is that one of them is in my division, and I don't know to what extent the issue extends to other divisions, but
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you. Just to say thank you very much for our deputies for attending today. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought it was important to thank people who have taken the time to come as a council member. Stephen, back to you.
I agree, Chairman, and it was an excellent presentation that they gave us. The number 2 on table 2, which is Galley Hill Road. Galley Hill Road is a busy road, particularly in the morning rush hour. And the crossing patrol is right by the school gate, where the road turns a bit of a dogleg. And the issue is that the school end of the zebra crossing is very difficult to see until you're right on top of the crossing. So that traffic travelling along the road may not perceive somebody trying to cross until it may be too late. There have been a number of near misses out of school hours. The issue really is that when you then add on to all of that, the mums outside the school gates chatting as they do, waiting for the kids to emerge, there is a gaggle of people at that end of the crossing, and there may be somebody wishing to cross. Whilst that gaggle of people is there, that the driver may not see as wanting to cross. So it is a dangerous place to cross the road at school time in particular. The whole point is that the reason it is a safe place for the kids to cross is the combination of a zebra crossing focusing people on that particular point to cross the road, which happens to be also at a junction of another road leading to a lot of houses, and the school crossing patrol itself. That's what makes it safe. I can conceive of something that would make it safe, broadly speaking, a light controlled crossing there, so that nobody crosses the road until the traffic has stopped. And there is incontrovertible rights of way. But with just the zebra crossing, I do not perceive that as a safe place for children to cross the road. It therefore brings into doubt the other 2 items, the one in Eastleigh and the one in New Forest, because I don't know whether anybody's actually taken an eyeball to these crossings to see if they are actually going to be safe in the absence of the school crossing patrol. So my concern is that we haven't done that we need to do that, and where we talk about in paragraph 30, that where it's proposed to be withdrawn, they'll speak to each school, and don't doubt those points will be forcibly made, but we need to make sure that people understand that if it is not going to be safe, the thing will be withdrawn. That is my concern, Chairman. I think the problems I have with Galley Hill Road mean that the other 2 are also in doubt in my mind. But I think what I'd be looking for is some kind of assurance that a proper look will be taken by somebody with as jaundiced an eye as mine to make sure it is safe.
Thank you. The next contribution is from Councillor Rod Cooper. Rod.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very uncomfortable with this, I'll be honest with you. One of the schools crossings in question is in my patch, and also there has been identified a speeding problem along this road already. I have actually just requested the SID data, and thank you to Councillor Adams-King for providing the SIDs some months ago there. It has produced some interesting results on this one road in particular. Therefore, I would like to ask if now would be an appropriate time to ask if I can propose an amendment.
You can propose an amendment at any stage of the debate that you wish to. It needs to be in writing and needs proposed and seconded. So the procedure is you can absolutely make an amendment should you wish to do so.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I do wish to make an amendment. I will read my amendment out to you and then email it to you or whoever it needs to go to, and ask for a seconder.
If you can email it to Caroline Rosa, she'll get in writing up on the screen so we can all see it. If you have it in writing.
Okay, I'll pop it in writing right now and get it.
While you're doing that, does anyone else want to contribute to the debate while Councillor Cooper is forwarding his amendment to the Democratic Service Officer. I've got Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Hiscock.
Thank you, Chair. We did, I think, discuss this quite a bit in the in the working group, and as you'll see from the working group report, we did have some concerns, and we say specifically that care is needed to ensure that the costs of introducing measures do not exceed savings. And at the moment, I'm really struggling to identify that that would be the case, given the very small amount of money and given the experience within, you know, one's own division and working knowledge of how much it's cost to put in safe road safety measures in the past. So I'm really doubting our ability. I totally understand where the officer's report is coming from and the need. But in my heart, I cannot see that we're really going to do this. We will achieve that. And so I'm very uncomfortable about that, because there are, I mean, I think as everybody will say, we're uncomfortable about anything that it relates to safeguarding of children. I think also one of the things we identified in the report was the fact that there are also social impacts. There are other things that school patrol officers do. You know, they notice the child that's sort of looking a little bit hungrier than usual, or their clothes aren't pressed, and there's those sorts of other social things that they do tend to do as well. And so I'm feeling decidedly sort of uncomfortable that we can actually do that, and also I'm taking into account in my own mind not just the pure cost savings, but our ability to actually maintain these safe routes. And I'll give you an example. A fellow councillor in Basingstoke has identified to me only last week an issue where, on a very popular school route in a very busy area, there are a number of zebra crossings. Those zebra crossings lines have become so faint you can't see them. There's a request being put in to paint them, and basically the computer says no, because we don't have enough money. So I'm overall not overawed by this as a recommendation, purely on a straightforward business case, let alone all those social values, importance and child safety issues. So I'm struggling to actually support this, just, you know, mathematically, let alone anything else.
Thank you. Councillor Hiscock. Dominic.
Thank you. I'm a bit concerned as well about the scope of the measures that might be taken to increase the safety around these schools. Frankly, Hampshire hasn't got a good record on this. We've already heard about the failure to repaint lines around schools and other areas, and one simple one that many authorities took years ago, and Hampshire's declined to do so far, is just to put a blanket 20-mile-an-hour limit outside all schools. Why isn't this being done years ago? Which is why I'm a bit concerned about the level of mitigation that we're going to get on this. It should be fairly simple, but I'm not convinced it's going to happen in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wade. Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. I tried to look at this from a holistic approach. Why are we doing it? We're doing it because we're a financial black hole. But 1.1 million is a tiny amount of that black hole. The impact on the safety of children is a big issue. Now, looking at what can we do? Well, why did we have lollipop people in the first place? If I may use that old-fashioned term. Because when a human being stands out in the road with the lollipop sign, cars stop. No driver wants to take out a human being and in serious trouble, do they? And because that person puts themselves in the middle of the road, children and parents can cross safely. Now, when we put up other things, flashing lights, SIDS, a whole variety of, shall we say, inanimate techniques, drivers, I'm in a rush, I'm going to be late for my meeting, I've got to do this, I can get through before it goes. I can get through before the light changes. They're shot, There are human beings are like that. It is in our DNA. We are chancers at times. Not all of us, but some are. But the children are. They'll see the light flashing. I'm going to cross. It's clear that the safest way to get a child across the road is using the existing crossing patrol. I mean, there's a comment that I think Councillor Drew mentioned about the difference between capital and revenue. When you're in a 114 situation, I think you can find all of it counts. The reality is that we're in such a financial hole, we're endeavour of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We really, really should not be looking at this. Personally, I can't support this at all. What price a child's life? Not 1.1 million. We'll never get that child back. If we do this, there will be accidents where there were previous crossing patrols. Don't hide yourself because it won't, because there will. Statistically, it will happen. We should not put the children of Hampshire in this situation. We as a council shouldn't be doing this. This is a cut too far. I would say we shouldn't do it at all, and I will not support this. If you want to save money, look in the future at getting it from developers. I mean, there's a school in Borley Park where they've already had accidents around, and they're trying to get a crossing patrol. I use this as an example. There could be many. We should be going to developers for this. We should be getting to the people that generate the extra houses and traffic to pay for these safety measures. But we shouldn't get rid of the safety measures at all. The safety of our children are better. And I'll give you one more thing about the PV statistics. All modelling is based on averages, percentages and targeting. What it doesn't take into account is the biggest variable on the planet, the human being. We do not act as models, we act by emotion, how we feel on the day and what we want to do. And no matter whatever safety measure you put in, you will not deal with that. But the lollipop person, the school crossing patrol, does. Because they're not, that human being barrier prevents children being knocked over. So no, I could never support this. It's immoral, it's illogical, and it's not right for the safety of Hampshire children.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Councillor Cooper, how's your amendment coming on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment has been forwarded to Caroline and is now ready.
Does anyone else have an amendment they wish to propose? Councillor Park, have you got an amendment you wish to add as well?
Well, yes, Chairman. I don't know what Councillor Cooper's amendment is going to be, so it's possible that they might overlap. I have forwarded it to Miss Rosa, and we will doubtless, she will doubtless be able to let you know what it is. It is quite possible, Chairman, that since both Councillor Cooper and I have done our amendments slightly on the fly, that the wording could be improved, and I will be happy to take advice on that.
In which case, I think we'll take a 5-minute comfort break for the legal team and Democratic Services to look at the two amendments and see whether they can be combined or whether they are separate and see how we deal with them. So we'll meet back in 25 past. That's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience watching online while we sorted out some technology issues. We have an amendment that has been put forward by Councillor Rod Cooper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stephen Parker, thank you very much. This amendment is being emailed to all members of the committee, and it is available on the screen in front of us. Do I need to read that? I think, Councillor Cooper, you will need to read out your amendment, and then we continue the debate on the amendment, should anyone wish to debate it, and then we will vote on the amendment, and then on the main motion in front of us. So, Councillor Cooper, can you read out your amendment, please? Sorry, Councillor Rod Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is to replace the existing recommendation that the Select Committee only supports the following recommendation made by officers as set out on page 3. To note the outcome of the 2024 Future Services consultation in relation to the proposals on the future of school crossing patrol service, and that the Select Committee further recommends that the Cabinet defers the decision to save 0.114 million from the 17 sites that do not meet criteria for justifying a school crossing patrol until further notice. Detailed site assessments have been carried out. That detailed work to assess all current sites is carried out and returns to Universal Services Select Committee for pre-scrutiny. That authority is only permitted through the Executive Member for Highways and Waste Decision Day rather than through delegated authority to the Director of Universal Services.
Thank you to Councillor Cooper. I will remind the committee that we're scrutinising the work of the officers. The officers' recommendation is going forward to the Cabinet on the 14th of October, irrespective of what we decide to do today. So that recommendation by the officers is unchanged. This is an amendment to the recommendation put forward by members of this committee that's been proposed and seconded in line with a procedure. Does anyone wish to debate this amendment? Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Drew. Kim.
Thank you, Chair. I would personally have preferred to have voted against the original recommendations, but I'm happy to support this on the basis that actually it reflects the things that we identified in the working party.
Thank you. Councillor Drew. David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support this, and I think actually it's probably better than just voting against, because it recognises that there are challenges that we need to address. But Chairman, I did ask the question during the break. As we know, there are a number of vacancies. Apparently there are 54 for the school crossing patrols, and at £6,000 each. By doing absolutely nothing, we're not spending 324,000. So I think this is a perfectly reasonable step to take, because we know we've got challenges recruiting, and we're already doing more than we've been suggested that we could do. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hare. Pal.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very nervous of supporting the original recommendations, but I'm happy to support this amendment because it does require further work and it does need to be pre-scrutinised. Thank you.
Councillor Wade. Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I support the spirit of this recommendation, but I generally don't believe in reviewing and changing any of the school crossing patrols. I think I've made that position quite clear, because I think it's the safest way for our children of Hampshire to cross the roads in safety. However, if the next piece of work is going to come for further scrutiny, whereby we can challenge and reject it, then I may lean to supporting it. I'm mulling this over because I'm against the principle of it, let's be honest.
Understood, thank you. Councillor Irish, Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was not at all happy with the original. I certainly wouldn't have supported it. I'm much happier with what Rod Cooper's put here today. I think that's sensible. I think it is wise to go and look at this in more detail, because I think we're rushing in too quickly and not looking at all the options. We do need to consider other things. I mean, we're not saving an awful amount of money, but let's try and save some children's lives and look at it properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think I just echo the comments of many other colleagues that I think it's probably fair to say that a lot of us felt slightly uncomfortable about the original proposal. This seems to me to be an eminently sensible one that we're going to look in greater detail. We've sent this back so we can look at each of these sites in greater detail. And then number 4 there, that it's going to come back to this committee so it can be discussed and debated here. So we will then obviously have a lot more information on which to make a decision on. So I will indeed be supporting it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Broomfield, Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support this amendment. My big concern with this proposal was, in my division, was the Chapel Road, Moor Green Road crossing patrol. I've had several contacts from residents. I've had a conversation with the head teacher of St James School, all of whom are agreed it would be a tragedy to lose that crossing. The problem with the PV squared is, and it's been touched on by several members, is that it's a sort of one-size-fits-all metric. And the layout of Moor Green Road, in particular, with about 200 yards of chicanes, is it creates a situation in which drivers take chances and follow through the vehicle in front of them because they want to take a gap when they can get it. And very often, and indeed only last week, very soon into the new school year, a 7-year-old boy was nearly hit by a vehicle that came across. It's a 4-way junction, Chapel Road, Moor Green Road in 2 directions, and the local recreation ground, which is used for parking. And a van just went straight through the chicane without looking. The school crossing patrol was absent through ill health. If she's not there, it's a disaster waiting to happen. So yes, I fully support this amendment. I would like to say, though, I do approve of paragraph 33 and replacing school crossing patrols with a more permanent crossing. I think that's something I can happily support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Cooper. Mark.
Yes, I'll support the amendment. I think we've aired a number of issues today, which I think will get home to the Cabinet when they make their decision anyway. It just strikes me that we have an employment pyramid here at the county. At the top, the Chief Executive, and at the bottom, the school crossing patrols, who cost £4,000 each a year. It does seem, therefore, a good investment, because when you think of the cost of an accident to anyone, adult or a child, the cost of ambulance care, police involvement, hospital care, and so on, is hundreds of thousands of pounds. And therefore, the county has that duty of care over and above the various issues we've been discussing today. And I would hope that in the reconsideration of the whole item, that comes into the argument. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no... yes, Councillor Wallace, Martin.
Thank you. The whole point of doing this, we wouldn't be looking at this if we weren't looking to save money. And the amount of money we're looking to save here is not a big amount in the big picture. So whilst I think I'm with the councillor at the other end of the desks here, whilst I kind of agree with the idea here of pausing, I don't want us to spend massive amounts of money doing assessments when we're actually not going to save very much money at all anyhow. Doing all these assessments could cost us more than any saving we could ever achieve. So it is questionable whether this is, I'm concerned about whether this is the right way forward for that reason.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I'm just going to make one comment as the chairman. Clearly there's a lot of unease around this room about the whole issue. It's an incredibly emotive issue for lots of us, for lots of our residents. I'm sure, like the rest of people, I've had an awful lot of correspondence from my residents about this issue, of which the overwhelming bulk is massively against trying to cut school crossing patrols. And it's quite an emotive issue for sizable numbers of parents who have been lobbying me, as I'm sure they've been lobbying most of the other councillors here. I felt very uncomfortable with going down this route. I fully accept that we are in a council in a financial hole, and therefore we have to try and make every attempt to try and save what we can. But I'm looking at the wording of the Road Traffic Act about the fact the council has to take reasonable measures on what it considers appropriate, and I think that's the key here. We have, in my view, a fair degree of discretion about what is reasonable, what's appropriate, and I think that this amendment asking for more detailed work on that issue, I think helps all of us make sure that we are going to make some tough decisions like that this one, which is particularly emotive, is done with more work. So I'm fully supportive of the recommendation, and I'd like to thank, obviously the deputies have gone, but I'm delighted that we had a school with children coming along today. I'm delighted that Councillor Porter wanted to speak, and I'd like to invite Patrick Blogg to make some final comments before we go to a vote. Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I've got nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Either Councillor North or Councillor Barman, you have a chance to say something now, or would you like to defer till say something at the end of the two items?
Thank you. I'll reserve the right to speak at the end, please, if I may. Thank you.
Of course you may. So we're going to vote on this amendment that everyone can see in front of them. I certainly don't have a copy in my inbox. Am I assuming that? Do others have copies of it? Okay, it is apparently on its way, but hopefully, even with glasses, we can all read the amendment that Councillor Cooper kindly read out. And therefore, can I ask for a show of hands in favour of the amendment in front of us? This replaces what is on, I believe, page 3 of the pack. So can I have a show of hands, all those in favour of this amendment, please? Thank you very much. All those against? And abstentions? That amendment is carried. Therefore, we now have to go to page 3 to actually, that has now become the substantive motion to vote once again on the motion that's on the screen in front of us as being the main recommendation for this cabinet, for this committee, of what we're going to recommend to cabinet. So that is on page, that replaces what's on page 3. So once again, can I have a show of hands for those in favour of the new recommendation, please? Thank you very much. Those against? And abstentions? That motion is carried. I propose to move straight on to 5B, street lighting, which in my estimation may not take as long because I feel it's not quite as contentious, but members may correct me and may have found things to discuss and debate and to argue about that I hadn't spotted. Anyway, we will move on. The first part is to invite Councillor Branson on behalf of the Working Committee. Do you wish to say anything about item 5B, street lighting, before we go into the procedure? Jackie.
I did make some comments at the beginning, but just to say that I think there are some good issues about reducing the street lighting for dark skies, for biodiversity issues as well, and as well as carbon reduction. So there's a lot of good in that, and as long as we have the ability to not to turn them off at places where there's crime and accidents and other issues that that arise.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Patrick to present the stream of 5B on street lighting. Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. The second appendix to the Cabinet report that I will present is for the proposal on street lighting. It contains 5 recommendations for Cabinet. The first is to note the outcome of the 2024 Future Services consultation in relation to the proposals on future street lighting operations. The second recommendation is on residential streets where street lights are already switched off between 1 AM and 4 AM. This period is extended by 2 hours per night. There are some specific days excluded from the recommendation. The next recommendation is to approve the approach for the removal of up to £500,000 budget provision for street lighting energy. The fourth recommendation is to reduce lighting levels in residential streets from 65% to 80%, from 2300 hours to midnight, and from 0500 hours to 0530 hours. The final recommendation is to reduce lighting levels on the classified road network with increased dimming between dusk and 2330 hours and between 0530 hours to dawn. I'm now going to present a brief summary of the main content of the paper. The County Council spends around £4.2 million per annum on energy for street lighting. To reduce this spend and contribute to addressing the financial pressures outlined earlier, the paper sets out a proposal to extend existing part-night switch-off times in residential streets and also reducing the brightness of streetlights on residential streets and classified road network. Proposals were consulted on in the Future Services consultation. These proposals are also set against the backdrop of increasing energy prices that we have experienced over the last couple of years, and you will see within the report that activity is also proposed for a move towards more LED lighting. Moving to the feedback from the Future Services consultation, there were 5,026 responses, and the results were broadly supportive of all elements of the proposal. In particular, responses were proactively sought from stakeholder groups that may be particularly impacted by the implementation. Comments in favour of the proposals included the reduction in cost of delivery and decrease in visible light pollution. Over 1 in 5 recognised the positive impacts the proposal would have on the environment. Comments from respondents indicated that the main concerns in relation to the three proposals were regarding safety and the potential for an increase in crime against vulnerable groups, particularly women, those from an ethnic minority, those limited by health or disability, and shift workers. Set out in paragraphs 40 to 50 are the details from the consultation feedback, and in particular, the table in paragraph 50 summarises the key concerns and the responses from the County Council. I would point out that, for the concerns highlighted, if proposals are agreed, the County Council would continue to monitor the areas where changes have been implemented and take remedial action should the need arise. This would include working closely with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, where requests can be made to turn lights back on. On this point, research suggests that there is no direct relationship between part-night lighting or dimming and crime or road traffic incidents. However, as mentioned, the County Council already works with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary and other organisations to review lighting levels when concerns are raised. The report also includes other positive impacts associated with the proposals, including that the implementation could cause a reduction in carbon emissions of approximately 500 metric tonnes and reduce energy consumption by approximately 2.2 gigawatt hours per annum. Furthermore, reducing street lighting levels can have positive impacts on light pollution, human and animal health. Again, much more detail is contained within the report. Overall, the savings proposed would help ensure the County Council continues to spend money effectively whilst maintaining essential services. Mitigations proposed would ensure concerns raised would be reviewed and, where necessary, steps taken to maintain lighting levels where it is considered prudent to do so in line with the County Council policy. On balance, therefore, it is recommended to implement the proposed changes to street lighting. These are the key points from my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite the committee to ask any questions of the officers on the report on the appendix in front of us? Councillor Hiscock, Dominic.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at paragraphs 29 and 30, where you're talking about the arrangements between Hampshire Police and Hampshire County Council to reduce or to amend the street lighting regime. But it looks, just reading this, as if as a local member or local pressure group, a local community group, you wish to make some alterations to the regime, you have to go through the police. Is this right? Or will local members be able to talk to officers directly or talk to somebody on the county directly to have a reconsideration of certain areas.
Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hiscock. Of course, often those routes are taken by the police where we hear concerns raised around safety and the like. So that tends to be the first port of call where we get feedback from the police and that we take measures. But of course, we would always talk to local members as part of that. So if concerns are raised by local members, we would triangulate that with other concerns that we get from other stakeholders as well. Thank you.
So we should speak to the police first before addressing you, or try and get an agreed arrangement with them?
Sorry, no, that wasn't what I said. What I said is actually we tends to be the first port of call we get impact from the police, but obviously we engage with local members as well as part of a whole range of issues. And if there are issues or concerns that local members have, of course they can come directly to us and we would look at those. Sorry, thank you.
Councillor Drew, David.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. The first one is a technical one about the cost of the electricity. In the report, it talks about 12. It's now 12p a kilowatt hour, a unit of electricity. Although when I did a quick Google search, although Mr. Google isn't necessarily right, it came up with 24p. And I just wanted to be clear about what the costs are and how much we might save if the price dropped much further. The second one was a question about
Mr. Drew, can I ask you to speak into the microphone? We've had
Sorry,
some comments that
the
the webcast isn't as clear as it
Yes,
could be, so remind everyone, please
Chairman.
use the mics
Yes,
so those can hear us.
I wouldn't want anyone to miss anything that I said. Some of you might, but now look. The light levels, when it talks about changing the light, dimming from 30 to 45%, or from 25 to 40%, I've frankly no idea what that means. And I think it would be really useful to understand how much light you need on a street to illuminate a pavement so you can walk on it safely. Obviously, no light whatsoever would mean you wouldn't see any changes in the surface, you wouldn't see the curb, and you might fall off and have an accident. Obviously, we're not going for daylight, but I think it might be more, we're not trying to illuminate it as bright as daylight, but there will be challenges in remote corners and between street lights where the level of light will be much lower. Personally, I think it would be more useful if we defined what we needed in terms of streetlights in the amount of light falling on the pavements, because it may well be, or would you agree with me that it could be useful to increase lights, the light output of some, because there was a dark corner somewhere, and that might make people feel safer. So, how many lux do we need on a pavement to be able to walk safely? Thank you.
Patrick, can you answer that technical question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Drew. I will come to Adrian to answer the question on light levels illuminated, and I may ask him to come in on the actual cost per kilowatt hour as well. But I think that the principle, by introducing more dimming, thinking about part night lighting, but also the LED switch we talk about as well, will all go some way to reducing energy consumption. And I think whether it is 12 pence per kilowatt hour or more, depending on the markets will fluctuate, as you know, all the time. Whatever happens, it will still be a reduction in our energy consumption, which can only be a good thing. In respect of the numbers in the report, I might ask Adrian just to comment on that one, because it may have varied simply because of the time taken when the report was drafted to where we are now. But I'll ask Adrian to comment on that, but also perhaps the one on the lighting levels and the lux levels at payment level. Adrian?
Keep your lights on, Mark. Your microphone's on.
We good?
You can carry on, yes, please.
Okay, the report refers to the price of energy based on 24-25 rates at 12.8p per kilowatt hour, and then it refers to the rates in 23-24, which I think is the 24.2p that you were referring to. But as Patrick says, the rates fluctuate. The savings that we get, we talk normally about the reduced energy consumption as a rate of what we do, recognising that the prices will always vary, but the energy consumption saving will be maintained as we dim our street lights. Going back to your second question, which was about illuminating the footways and what lux level is needed. I don't know what lux level is needed. I guess that probably varies between individuals. So what we do is we dim the lighting output, and that reduces the power drawn. But in terms of what light level is actually required, there is a lighting classes for each type of road. What's proposed in this is a reduction in the lighting class, but it's not, I couldn't tell you what the actual lux difference will be.
Thank you. Just to come back, I think it's actually very important because we're trying to provide safe walkways, and knowing how much light we should have and how much we've got would be hugely helpful. And another suggestion, we could perhaps have our own micro energy systems that doesn't require the grid to power certain street lights, using, for example, solar panels and batteries, that might well save us, might disconnect us from having to pay grid prices. I just put that in as an innovative and entrepreneurial thing that maybe someone could take forward at some point. Thank you.
I'm not sure there's a question there, was there?
Well, I think the follow-up was to make the point that we do need to know, like, would you agree that we need to know what the lux requirement is? And would you agree that it might be useful to look at how we could generate our own electricity in a very small area, because it would disconnect us from the grid, and then we wouldn't be subject to fluctuations in energy price changes?
Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Drew. On the lux levels, I think, as Adrian said, we look at output, but I think it's a fair point made of what are the lux levels down at pavement level, for example, which will vary. I think the second point, we're always looking for innovation, stuff that we can do to save costs, look at what we do. So it is something we would always consider, perhaps not as part of this proposal in front of you in the papers, but looking forward where innovative stuff comes forward across a whole range of our service, we would always look to that. Thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that, possibly for James Potter, about the ERF, about whether we are buying energy from ourselves, effectively from the ERF, or whether we're buying it at market price?
Excuse me, my understanding is that Veolia are selling the energy from the energy recovery facilities direct to market. So we're not in control of that.
So when the contract comes up for renewal of that, that might be an issue that we can consider, whether buying it from ourselves may be cheaper than buying it from the market.
Yes, we could have a look at that, but you'd be effectively talking about a private wire network or porting, I think they call it, energy from one point in the network to another. That's technically quite we'd have to look at that. We're not energy experts. Most of the energy from the energy recovery facilities goes direct to grid.
The next question is from Councillor Mark Cooper. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. We seem to have a very sophisticated electronic system which governs the lighting times and so on. It's quite impressive the way it works. However, does it take account of the variations in light at night caused by moonlight? I mean, recently we've had a whole series of nights with harvest moons, which are at the aphelion, I think, when they say the moons come close to the Earth, and you literally don't need street lighting. So is the system we've got able to take account of that and adjust the images and the lux and so forth accordingly?
Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cooper. You're absolutely right. The system is very sophisticated. It can go down to street lamp level. But in respect of that particular question, I'm going to hand over to Adrian Gray to cover the detail, if that's okay. Thank you.
No, it doesn't. I mean, as I made my earlier point, the only way we can control the light is by reducing the energy output or the energy drawn by the street light. It doesn't respond currently to external lighting levels, which would also obviously impact on the lux level on the ground as well.
Councillor Wade, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, any type of change to street lighting is very much a broad brush approach. I understand that. I take on board the point you made earlier about the police security issues. But do we ever review these changes across the county to look at areas, hang on a minute, perhaps we should do something differently here? Because circumstances change, they don't remain constant. The light illumination will be constant once you change it, but the circumstances that they are illuminating change, developments, traffic, could be a criminal issue, could be a whole plethora of things. But do we actually have a review process, or do we just change it and then wait till, say, somebody complains or something?
Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wade. So in respect of a review process, I would almost take back to, we've made some changes like this previously in previous savings proposals before, and each time we've done consultations as part of that process. So what that's really helped us do is inform our position for the changes that were made and then the changes that are made subsequently. So in respect of how we've got feedback, that's really helped inform that work, as has the future services consultation that we've just done. In terms of a formal review feedback, Adrian, is there, I mean, you're right, it's a broad brush approach, and then we see almost by exception, if we hear feedback from that, the police, we've talked about local members, is there a formal review process?
We haven't and formally reviewed whether the levels of lighting remain appropriate. We work within our budget clearly, so each savings change that we've made in the past has been financially driven. We do respond when we get requests to review the lighting, so on a local basis. But we haven't done a system-wide review as to whether it's what we've done remains correct. But as Patrick says, the consultation response suggested that it is.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I had seen no other hands up. Can I confirm there's no one wishing to make an amendment to the recommendation? Councillor Taylor, do you have an amendment? I do apologise. You've let me know of an amendment earlier on, and you did the correct thing. Would you wish to read this out and then see if you have a seconder? Just to check, can we put this on the screen? Is that possible?
Do you want me to read it out as well? Thank you. Okay, Chair, thank you. In terms of the recommendations that are in front of us on our report, rather than the officer's report, I'd like to add an additional bullet point, which will say, future requests to vary street lighting in individual areas should have sympathetic regard to factors such as the nature of the built environment, personal safety and security, and travel safety, and not just specific crime or road accident statistics.
Thank you, that's very clear. Can I have a seconder for that proposal, please? Councillor Irish, thank you for seconding that. That is correct in terms of the procedure. Does anyone wish to debate that amendment? Councillor Taylor, do you want to say a few words about it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I'm putting this amendment forward for two reasons. One is it reflects the work of the Working Party, which felt that we should ensure that in fact, it does say in respect of impacts relating to strikes, almost word to word what I'm putting down in this amendment. And the other reason that I'm requesting that is I will hear, I'm sure, that officers will always take a view and listen to other things. But the reality is that that isn't always the case. Sometimes the computer does just say no. And I do feel that we do need to formalise that as an approach and recognise that that should be an approach, because I mean, there are a lot more things to take into account than just crime statistics or road accident statistics. I mean, certainly in the Basingstoke and Dean wider area, and I'm sure there are other urban areas that this relates to, we have had building of estates and environments where the nature of the build and the design of it creates of poor access for residents down dark back alleys. They don't have driveways that they drive up to and then go into their front door. It's networks of dark, inhospitable pathways, and that does cause a real issue within those areas. And typically those kind of areas are also areas of deprivation. And where we might not see high crime statistics reported, because the result of reporting crime usually results in a broken window if you're lucky. And so we wouldn't have that kind of information to rely on. And it also tends to combine other effects of other cuts and services that we and local councils have made in terms of maintaining the environment. So areas become very overgrown. Pathways have debris, massive hedges all over them, weeds everywhere, and lots of these areas are built in hills where the steps are very difficult to negotiate. These kinds of areas that are built in this way tend not to have good community advocacy. They don't have necessarily parish councils. They certainly don't have parish councils who can sit there and nag for Britain to officers for this. And so therefore I would like to see not just a we'll do this in line with our policy. I'd actually like to see formal recognition of the fact that we will have greater regard to a wider range of factors and that we build that in. So that's why I'm doing this motion. And of course it supports the work of the Working Party.
Thank you. Councillors will have realised we've moved into a debate on the report and the amendment together, so I invite contributions to the debate on both the report and the amendment. And I believe Councillor Hiscock is first.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of my question really was just to get a feel of how important the police were going to be in deciding how much street lighting we display or use or produce. And I was unhappy at the idea that the police may be the final arbitrators in this, and I don't think that's appropriate. So I do welcome this amendment, and I'm grateful I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Wade, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chairman. I represent a district with pockets of deprivation that are in the top 10% statistically in this country. I think this is a very good amendment, and I will certainly be supporting it. But we need to look at the factors affecting people, and statistics don't always tell the human story. It's right to take into account crime and criminal issues because there is public safety is very important, community safety is very important, but there are also other issues that's just slipped by, especially in an area which has pockets, not a lot of deprivation, if you understand my meaning. We need to be sensitive to these issues. So I will be supporting this amendment. It's a good one.
Thank you. Councillor Drew, David, did you have a contribution to that?
Yes, I'm grateful for the call to speak, Chairman. I'm happy to support this amendment. I think that it does make some sense to have a little bit more flexibility than purely crime statistics. Loving the concept of parish councils nagging for Britain, having 20 parish councils in the Test Valley division. I'm not commenting on whether they nag or not, but they do a great job. And I think where communities don't have parish councils or that local representation, it can be harder to get things done. But I think the point about such factors of the nature of the built environment, in my point about lux levels, I think certain constructions and the arrangement of estates and developments might well mean that there are areas that aren't as well illuminated as we might wish them to be, and therefore a little bit more light in that patch after due consideration might be a good thing. So yeah, overall I'm content to see that go forward, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to contribute to the debate? Excellent. Patrick, do you want to make any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, members. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Councillor Bowman again whether you want to make a comment now or make a comment after the recommendation has been voted on.
After the recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the amendment in front of us first, which we can all see, which Councillor Taylor kindly read out and has been proposed and seconded. And can I have a show of hands for those in favour of the amendment, please? That is unanimous, very straightforward. We will now move on to the substantive recommendation, which is on pages 4 and 5 of the pack, and obviously includes the recommendation in the amendment in front of us. If anyone wishes me to spend 5 minutes reading through the detailed recommendation again, I'm very happy to do so. But if I see no one wishing to do that, we're just going to vote on the recommendation on page 4 and 5, including the amendment that Councillor Taylor put forward, and that recommendation is fortunately on the screen in front of us. So can I have a show of hands, please, for all those in favour of that recommendation? And once again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Councillor Bowman, would you like to make some comments, please?
Thank you. And thank you, Chairman, members, for offering me the opportunity to comment briefly following your discussions today. The views expressed by everyone here reinforce the commitment we have to serving the people of Hampshire, and your diligent scrutiny and thorough consideration of proposals around school crossing patrols and street lighting is vital. Hello, that's better. With demand and costs continuing to rise around the delivery of care and protection of our most vulnerable adults and children in Hampshire, you will be acutely aware of the ongoing pressure on the county's already constrained budgets. Today's recommended savings measures form part of a broader proposed approach to help towards the significant financial challenges we face from April 25 onwards. Having listened to your feedback on these proposals today, please know that your views have been heard. As we approach the final decision next month, Cabinet will carefully consider the recommendations of this select committee, including your amendments today, alongside those of the county officers in their report. We will also review the feedback from the public consultations held earlier this year on the proposals, news reports on these issues to date, and the potential impact on residents, particularly the children, should the recommendations go ahead. My thanks to everyone who completed the consultation and provided their feedback as part of this important scrutiny process, and also to the Hampshire County Council's Youth Forum for their engagement and valuable suggestions regarding school crossings. Finally, thank you to Councillor Porter for her deputation, and also the three children that came today, and that's Jackson, Sophia and Harry from Basingstoke, for their excellent deputations as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barman. If the webcast can be ended, please.